Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search from my site. Developed a new practice of capturing voicemails on MP3. And when I don't have someone's phone number, or if I just don't want to call them, I prefer to leave a message. So I have a collection of these catching the moments after I learned my mother died. I have them kind of progressing through the social emotional fallout from the sad news. One of them, as I remember, captures my foul language and anger, directed at a friend named John. And then I think a message that sort of made me feel like I was finished collecting these to my sisters. I'm going to be pausing and tapping through and comments at the end. Mike Meadows.
Meadows, it's Tom Duty. I am calling you on an occasion I'll tell you about in just a minute. But first, I'm going to explain why you. All the way back to Ignatius, I think, I made some friends that, for all practical purposes, are, potentially lifelong friends. And, but the truth is, I just really held on to one, and it was John Patton, and really didn't maintain relationships with many other of our classmates. But as you know, as I assume you know, as a graduate of St. Ignatius, you really don't have to do much. Just by being a member of our class, and the mere mention of one another's names kind of brings back memories good memories for a lot of people. And the ones that bring back bad memories of high school, well, you don't hear from them, and in time we forget about them. So anyways, now we're in our 50s, and looking forward, eventually some of us will die. That started very early. I remember Paul Gallagher was the first one to die in our class. I mean, he was probably in his 30s. Maybe he didn't even make 30. And I assume there's been some others since then. Oh, Joe Heller, of course. He's famous because he died when the towers fell. So here's the occasion. Here's the purpose and why I severed with John Patton in I have said this in a broader audience, so I'll say it now. John Patton's an alcoholic, and he doesn't deny it, but it's a friendship that is a battle for me, and the battle is still worth fighting, but to trust him on any occasion that's meaningful for me is wasted on John. So that's why you are an alternative. My one link to our class has broken, and maybe you will serve this role. So the role, of course, it's not much. The news is that my mother died. My mother is Martha Duty. She was born Martha Jean Rocker. She married my dad, Bill Duty. Martha is from Baraboo, Wisconsin. She was born in 1928, and she died. I don't know if it was March 31st or April 1st. My brother called me promptly yesterday morning, and when he found out, and he said she died overnight, and that was sufficient for me at the moment. So which day it actually was, I'm not quite sure, but I learned yesterday morning, and she had her 91st birthday, but not her 92nd. So, Mike, here's the thing. I'm going to choose you as the one person on the panel that obligates you to nothing. I just, if I ever go to a reunion or, talk to anyone, I didn't know your mother died, and I get harassed for not telling anyone. And the answer is going to be, well, I told Mike Meadows. So, I obviously don't have an obligation to tell our entire class. However, I feel at the same time that telling nobody is something I kind of can't defend. At least I don't want to have to defend it. So anyways, if this seems like a burden to you, I hope it doesn't. It's an occasion to me where, like you probably know, I survived a teenager. My firstborn son died in 2007. He turned 19 but never turned 20. And so, dealing with death in an unexpected, premature, tragic death like my teenager son, and then now with an expected death of my mother, and quite honestly not tragic. The circumstances and the way she died are quite reasonable. And so anyways, the comparison and bringing to account my son David, who died in 2007, and now my mother, who died yesterday or the day before. The circumstances are quite different, but yet a lot of it's the same, Mike. So it's emotional for me. I have abundant support, and in touch with siblings, or at least my brother, kind of not real active with my sisters and cousins, and they got me on the recovery from the death of my firstborn son David, and have taken a significant step with me on the road to recovery here. So anyways, that's the news. My voicemail to you. I'm on the Hudson-Bergen Light Rail. I am circumnavigating Hoboken, New Jersey. I'll soon get off at a stop that's deep in the Palisade, which is a rock mountain, is a simplified form of it. Take an elevator up to the street, and then a 15-minute walk home, or a 10-minute walk home. Mike Meadows, Chow from New Jersey to, I know DC, but I know you're in the suburbs, so it's got to be Maryland. Chow from New Jersey to Maryland, Mike. Good night.
A few minutes after 6 in the morning in California, and he knows I didn't just call to chat, so if he picks up his voicemail, and he calls me back, I will tell you that he knows. In other words, he doesn't. I just left a message. He could probably guess, but there's a few guesses that would not be right. And then I called Ryan, and I did tell him by voicemail. Now, I chose the different approach because Kevin will call me back, and with the history I have with Ryan, I do not expect a call back, nor did I ask for a call. I did say it would be nice if he would call. For some reason, he and his sister have decided the pleasure of me hearing their voice is something they'll deny me. So I felt like it sounded better than it just sounded now when I left it on his voicemail. But anyways, I'm not sure what or who, if I'll tell after that, but I just wanted to let you know. And I just want to repeat the story of a few years ago, David. I just started the year with a mild illness that had me in bed for a couple of days, and darkness came over me. And in my time, I mean, I didn't feel like I was going to die, David. I don't want to exaggerate my illness, but I felt Martha would die, and I'd be left out. Thank you for not leaving me out. I love her. New Jersey to Colorado.
In about 20 minutes. Your feedback on my tribute to Mom was generous and kind, and I just want to, if I didn't say thank you, thank you. And if just given the fact that a traditional church service would have put you over me as the person to deliver that, and so for you to recognize your place, even if that had nothing to do with saying you approved or at least didn't feel I disrespected anyone, that was huge for me, David. It was generous of you and kind, and again, thank you. The Ellen obituary thing, and and her feedback, I shot off some instant feedback, and because I know what it's like to be on a deadline, and I thought she might want something faster than something more thorough. I read it through more thoroughly, and I saw absolutely nothing. She was missing some of her own grandkids, and number one, I didn't detect it. Number two, I'm not qualified to detect it. There's a lot more great-grandchildren than I knew existed. And by the way, this is news. It's news to me that you've got another one coming. So I've lost track of some things. If you haven't noticed, I did some Ellen ass kissing that, I haven't done sister ass kissing, period, for a decade. And in a large way, the absence of that has shaped my life, for better, for worse. And so anyways, it feels kind of good. I don't know if it seems sincere or authentic to Ellen, but it still felt good to praise her a little bit. And anyways, I'm going to go online. Love from New York City. I'm at Penn Station, David. Love from New York City to Colorado. Good. I'm on a train along the Hudson River. It separates New Jersey and New York, and then I take a second train into the city. Just, for that worry about little brother thing, I am absolutely as obsessive as I possibly can be. Wearing a mask, washing my hands, not touching doors, not touching my face, like ever, unless I have a clean wipe, which now I'm on my way to Target to get resupplied. I am not out, but I'm getting a second package. So the email from Anne is just wonderful. The fact that she had to do a second obituary is almost could be predicted. And the fact that we have two obituaries for our mother, one from Ellen and one from Anne, and not one from the family, is comical, tragic, and fitting. Now, the content of the obituary, Anne certainly favors what she felt was understated in Ellen's, and I agree, is the professional accomplishments of Mom. And I just, there's several things I want to comment about here. Is that Drew's comments are just wonderful. He had the rare perspective of having some inkling of who she was, who our mother was, who Martha was, who Aunt Martha was, from the perspective of a family member, and also a professional perspective of her. And that's rare, unless you're in a family business. That just doesn't happen very much. Family members see other family members as they are, and usually doesn't get another perspective of them from the outside world. So Drew's comments, and especially given his perspective, just wonderful. I also got a comment from John O'Connor, our cousin. Now, he's about a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades older than me. And here I'm describing my mom. He's thinking about his aunt, and he feels that we seem to touch upon some innate nature of Martha, which was wonderful to read, and also kind of consistent with these the ideas of how people see Mom or saw our mother. Anne's pumping up a little bit the professional accomplishments and emphasizing those where she felt they had been underemphasized. She did a beautiful job of it, and certainly I had overlooked some things that she featured nicely. The other thing is who she copied. She copies my ex-wife and doesn't copy me, which to me is great. One of the reasons that this exclusion, occasional exclusion from the family, was so easy for me to handle is I almost died in 1994. So I said, well, I'm not dead, but I'm excluded. and I'd be excluded if I were dead. If I were dead, my ex-wife would be very much an extended part of the family, just as if I think when someone dies, the family will embrace that in-law in ways that doesn't happen with a divorce. So I had always just hoped that at least me or my ex-wife would be included in things, because ultimately by excluding both of us, our kids are excluded. And so in Ann's way, she told me this directly, that, you know, she favored Angie over me. And it was probably the last time I talked to her, other than Mom's birthday party. So that was very nice to see Angie's name there. In addition to that, you know, Angie can't be shown in the formal obituary, yet she is shown respect by this email. Well, because of that, I shared the email with Ryan and Luke, and I think it's a testimony to the duties treating my ex-wife with respect. On the occasion of her mother's death, my ex-wife is consulted and mentioned in text in a very public way with a relevant audience, and referred to favorably, which is the respect a mother of the deceased grandchild should get, regardless of what has happened since she became the mother of those grandchildren. So anyways, I thought that was wonderful. The Drew part was wonderful. And it seemed to me I was going to read along as I did this, David, and I have 2 more stops to go. So I'm going to take another look at it. The other part that I really wanted to mention is just because Ann doesn't talk to me, just because I write her annually and say I'd love to call you for a holiday greeting, I would just like to hear your voice. I've quit doing that recently, but I did it for a long time. And, you know, with an email that I believed was a good email, and not have yet to get a response to any of those. So anyways, given the idea of Ann partly explained that I should take this meaningful and personally and offensive, partly explained by this self-exile, regardless of whether she doesn't talk to me, the fact that she's talking to no one else is an upsetting notion. And her text shows just the opposite. You know, these nice, long phone calls with relevant people at this time. To me, that was very comforting. And Patty O'Connor, by the way, maybe that's John's wife. I don't know who Patty O'Connor is. And the obituary itself, as it's published.
I was on the train.
So, I just lost track. The obituaries themselves, I'm going to look for the one in Baraboo and in the Madison paper. Newspapers have a tendency to do additional edits, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they make it shorter and make it worse. They rarely make it shorter and make it better. But anyways, you sharing it with me was just wonderful. Thank you. Obviously, Ann included my ex-wife excluded me, and so I won't reply to her directly. But any comments that I have you would share with her would be wonderful. David, you've just been great through all this. It's just nice. Love from Hoboken. Maybe you heard the guy.
JP, I'm going to attempt a sort of an uplifting message, starting with some of the water under the bridge between us. So, John, I'm going to start with that Florida rocket launch. That attack of you on me over this stupid fucking pictures I'm sending, followed by a hang up, followed by, like, more than a year of silence, I can't even move on without mentioning it again. And I'm probably not done with it. You caught me by surprise. It was out of character. And the most surprising thing was the silence that followed. So the eruption was like, okay, this is another Tom and John thing. But the silence was just, I don't know what the fuck you were trying to prove.
What happened?
Maybe you accomplished something.
Recording.
I think you accomplished nothing. But we're trying to move on. Let's see. Now, the thing about, missing your mother's, the news of your mother's death was incomprehensible to me. No, it is comprehensible to me. This idea that you think social media, that this is so newsworthy on social media, therefore I know about it. First of all, no one that uses social media to a higher level, to a more frequent extent, like I do, or maybe Packy, or I don't know. We have friends in common that are active. Liz Bowman is one of them, and Mike Gallagher, a classmate and a high school classmate, St. Angeles and a high school classmate is one of them, and this idea that it was unimaginable for you that I missed this news can only be from a man that doesn't understand the news channel. I mean, it's like missing something on CNN when you know I'm a Fox watcher. You just got to accept that I don't know. And even when I told you I didn't, you didn't want to believe it. Whether you realize it or not, when that night of drinking, you denied that I was telling you the truth. Another fuck moment. And somewhere in our conversation, it veered off into this idea of Aaron and Ryan and the soiled relationship I have with them. You talked about my lost kids. Well, be absolutely sure there's only one of them that's lost, and he's dead, and that's David. So to bundle Aaron and Ryan into that category is they're all lost is something that I don't accept, and something that's also not true. They have a soiled relationship with me. What the status of it is now is estranged, soiled, troubled, silent, angry. I don't know what it is. But any of those words would work. And the relationship with David, of course, I am the surviving father of David, the late David Michael Duty. These are very different categories. And I much prefer the status I have with Aaron and Ryan to being the surviving father of David Duty. So you see, I also make this point about, you warned me about it. And as if I didn't know the trouble I was headed into, and as if that trouble I headed into, which was realized, can't be reconciled. It is reconciled. I'll talk about it more if you want to. And I'll talk about it more even if you don't want to. I'll probably bring it up again. But anyways, it is what it is, John. And it was a tender topic for a very long time. And it's not anymore. It's not that I'm over it. It's just that I can talk about it without being overcome with emotion. And if you think it's productive, and even if you don't, you just think it would be productive for you, I'm glad to explore it again. There's some reason you bring it up and bring it up again. So somehow, John, I want to transition to this idea of underlying health conditions. As a stroke survivor, the underlying health condition I have is unquestioned. It's documented in the medical MIB. It's called Medical Information Bureau. I don't know what it is, but bottom line is it's very difficult for me to get life insurance if I were to get it, if I were to pursue it again. And let's face it, I'm doing this work in New York, which if I were to get coronavirus, I'd look back and say, why'd you keep doing that? I mean, financially, I don't have to, but it's natural for me to want to work. And the fact that I have the privilege of being able to work without having to make excuses for it. I mean, it is essential work, and I was doing it before the shutdown happened. And so why would I stop now? And given the fact that I'm in New York now, it's understandable that this is a theoretically risky behavior I engage in. So, John, your underlying health conditions are just right there on the surface. I mean, your weight, your smoking, and your drinking. And so you match those risk factors up with coronavirus and COVID-19. And John, we both have our underlying health conditions. I'm, doing as much as I can to address you. There's no obvious signs that you're doing anything to address yours. So regardless of whether you have these underlying health conditions and we're in this attack of this virus, I have them claim that I have a case to make that I'm actually mitigating the risks, and I have the underlying health conditions, but yet I'm at least doing something about them. The same is probably true for you. It's just not as obvious. The truth is, John, both of us are under risk with our age, our advancing age, and this virus. This isn't something that's going to be behind us as soon as the Wisconsin people or the Michigan people berate their governor into reopening the state. It's not that easy. New York, that prides itself on being fast, is unquestionably going to be slow coming out of this. Not only was it hit early and most severely, it'll also have the most lingering effect. New York is just not in a position to get out of this thing in any reasonable period of time. So anyways, here's my message of peace, John. I know from my dad's over drinking that his life was built on drinking. I mean, from Sparky to Joe Cachet to, I won't list the friends, but you know some of these people are. Bob Finley, Jerry Smith. Every single friend that was a sustaining friend of my father from the past and into my childhood was a fellow drinker. And then meanwhile, I've come to realize that the reason why we weren't real active on my mom's side of the family, we're very active on my dad's side of the family, was my father's drinking. And my dad's drinking just did not play well on my mom's side of the family. And so I have more cousins on my mom's side than on my dad's, but yet I know very little about them. I know less about them than my dad's side. I mean, just you very simply could name probably a few of my cousins on my dad's side and probably zero on my mom's side. And John, that's all because of drinking. It's all because of my dad's excessive drinking. He played well on my dad's side with his sisters and their descendants, mothers and fathers of the sisters' descendants, and it didn't play well on my mom's side of the family. So it shaped his life. And so if he were to get out of drinking, he literally gets out of his life. And John, it's my opinion, that's what you're facing. The business success that you've had, which is significant as I see it. Your medical sales have navigated you into some pretty nice places. Well, your behavior is also navigating out of some of these sweet places. I don't know where you are professionally, and I need to know. But my point is that when you're a heavy drinker like you are, and my dad was, and the life is built around drinking, the professional success is built around drinking, friends are built around drinking, a very active family life on one side of my family is built on drinking, and the absence of that active family life on the other side of my family is built on drinking. So to not drink is a complete wholesaling of friends, and in theory, making sober friends. It's a daunting task, and my dad never made it. He died a drinker. So anyways, that setup, John, is for you and me. I'm probably the only friend, or one of the few friends, who will even engage with you, acknowledging your drinking, and respond to your messages, and talk to you, and take your phone calls, and listen to your bullshit. And when you go off like you did on Florida with the fucking rocket explosion, I guess the rocket didn't go off, but you did. I think it's the story in Florida. I don't know. I could probably internet search it, but it'd be hard to find the date. And I'm not going to bother, but I think you said something about that rocket never exploded. Well, you clearly did. So my point is that I'm the friend that you have, which is either the one you have, or one of a few, or one of the only, or the only, that will keep riding with you through your bullshit. So I put that in front of you. I do care about you. I look at you with these, underlying health risks, and I think, life is fragile. We're under attack from this fucking virus. And I do wish you'd do something about it, only because it'd kind of be nice to grow old together. You don't seem to care, and that's okay. If you check out earlier, and it sort of seems that you did it by choice or by neglect, I understand, John. I won't fault you for it. We've had some good years, accented by some not so great years. But nonetheless, there's some history between us, and to the extent it can go and play something in the future, I think would be good for both of us. I know it would be good for me, and weathering through the water under the bridge that we've had is something I've done before. I feel reconciled with it now, and willing to do again. Go do another rocket blast, and shoot off at me. I won't react as severely as I did last time. But nonetheless, I'll engage, and we'll see what happens. Love from New York City. Right now, I'm at the corner of 6th Avenue and 15th. I came into the city to go to Trader Joe's. 21st, got some food to eat that'll carry me through my deliveries. And then I'm going online here in about 45 minutes. Ciao, ciao, ciao. And Alan, Marty. Now this message will also go to David, but my target audience is not David. It's Tuesday night, and though because of my schedule, it feels like Sunday night. Kind of a family day. All right, it's Monday night. But same thing. It feels like a Sunday night. Feels like a family day, which is sort of why this motivation to express myself on the topic of our mother's death has surfaced. And now, first, David expressed when this New York became the very public epicenter of this COVID, was worried about me. And I never forget that I'm the baby of this family, in the Bill and Martha family, and on the broader family on both sides, I'm the baby of our generation. And the idea that people worry about me when it seems needless worries is something I don't take lightly. So in the event any of that is a concern to you, I'm going to start with that topic. January 24th, I got my attention turned to this news about COVID. It wasn't COVID then, it was the coronavirus, and it was in Wuhan, and it wasn't anywhere else. And that's the kind of thing Hannah and I pay attention to. Our domestic conversations would include that. Very soon after, it included Hajime and my mother-in-law, Kazuko, and his wife, my sister-in-law, Rosa. In Italy, they were in the first Italy lockdown. So this has been part of our conversation almost daily since January 24th. So we have, I'm not saying we're safe. I'm not saying we're protected. I'm not saying we have nothing to fear. I'm just saying we're thoughtful. And we have been, if anything, the American public is arguably behind the curve. We've been relatively ahead of the curve. Now it has become very clear that South Korea and Vietnam were clearly ahead of the curve, and I don't give Hannah and I that much credit. However, compared to the American public, we were very much ahead of the curve. So just to return to David's comments about worrying about me, it just seemed a little ironic that here he is, a father, he's a grandfather. On one occasion, I talked to him on a holiday. His ex-wife was there for the holiday, and he's worried about me. Again, it seems odd that I get his attention, but I understand, and which is why I include the words about my own sense of life, given this risk of infectious disease. Now, moving on to the death of our mother. The death of our mother, in many ways, feels absolutely identical to me, to the death of my firstborn son, David. And as much as it feels the same, it's personal, it's time sensitive, it's who I lost. And to that extent, it's as different as it is the same. I did record a tribute to Martha, our mother, and it's
attracted comments that have been remarkable to me. The generosity and the favorable reactions have been wonderful. I will tell you that our cousin John O'Connor was the first, and he's an English professor. He's a retired English professor, and I have read through his comments 4 or 5 times. Looking at each word. His comment was only a couple of sentences, but yet I felt like this guy's a retired English professor. He probably chose each word very carefully. So in addition to comments being abundant, they're also generous and favorable. And John O'Connor's was clearly one that warmed my heart. So that sense about David's loss, and now the sense of our mother's loss. This part feels very much the same. I had a tribute to David. I had this presence on the internet that, to me, became over the years very healthy, productive, and therapeutic. And that same mechanism is kind of the 911 call is back in action for me, and I feel like I have traction. Now, the part where it feels very different is that Brian and Kevin, I don't want to credit Brian more than Kevin because it was as much Kevin as anyone else. But the dispatch, the guy who actually did the work was Brian, was kind of under the dispatch of Kevin. And this is very much within the mechanism of authority within the Toohey family. In other words, Kevin would have gotten someone else to do something for me if it wasn't for Brian. So anyways, Brian reached out to each of our cousins. And I mean it, Amy and Drew and Julie and then Meg and Beth and Kevin. And I had phone calls with each of them. Now, Brian had pre-called everyone for me, and it was therapeutic, and it was, as I look back at those moments, Amy specifically was number one for me. I mean, aside from Kevin and Brian, the thing wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Kevin and Brian. So those two clearly are the top of the list of a value-added, therapeutic, helpful, and then Amy. And everyone else was helpful, but it was clearly those three that really stood aside to be therapeutic for me. Now that's the part that Martha's death and David's death doesn't feel the same. That, there's no crisis that goes out that says, oh my God, Tommy needs to stay afloat. Let's give him a boost. That isn't really happening because our mother's death was expected, and I'm not her father, I'm her son. And so that's a part that feels different. So all this preamble is kind of for one point. I reach out to each of you, and I will tell you sincerely, I'd like to have a phone call with each of you. Now, Alan and Marty, I will have to tell you that over the years, I've reached out to Anne repeatedly on holidays, asking to initiate a phone call. Now, I've kind of realized in recent years that I feel like, even though Anne might deny this, Anne, you might deny this, that you felt pressured to choose one side or the other. The generous comments about my first wife on the occasion of Martha's death were welcomed by me. It's kind of warmth that you showed her that maybe in time her family will reach out to me in a similar way at a moment of crisis, at a moment of death, at a moment of need. That's yet to be seen, but nonetheless, the warmth and generosity Anne expressed was great. But it also kind of made it clear to me that I was off Anne's radar, and it's fine if you deny this. I don't need to reconcile it. But somehow my pings to Anne each year, I quit a few years ago because it seemed pointless, were not responded. And I kind of, in my head, said, well, that's as much as I can do. If Anne doesn't want to talk to me, neither do Marty or Ellen. So anyways, that's where I am. I'm not reaching out to each of you three, and I have reached out to you. But Alan and Marty, I haven't reached out to you in any way to have a phone conversation. But I'd like to. It's not necessary. I don't want to add to the reasons you worry about your little brother in the event you elect not to. But what I'm trying to do in this occasion, like Brian did on David's death, is kind of broker my own phone calls. The fact that Amy, Drew, Julie, Lori, I even talked to Lori. I forgot Lori my first time through. I talked to Mark and Brian and Kevin and Meg and Beth, and each of them were expecting my call, and they went from an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes with Amy to like 5 minutes with Mark, and then his cell phone battery was going to die. You know, so it was this real reality of family, being able to help a member in need, and it was just a shining light on a dark period. So anyways, to the extent that can happen with Martha, I'm trying to do what Brian did for me on that occasion. I'm trying to do it for myself. In the event you want to have a phone conversation, I will tell you it would be nice for me. I invite it, I welcome it, but I'm not going to ring your phones. You know, a message through David. David and I are in reasonable, frequent contact. The reason why he's not a target audience on this is that I'm talking to him. And I know he'd pick up the phone and talk to me, and we have talked on occasion. And messages and whatever. I feel like that door is open. Alan and Marty, I feel like that door is not open. And I'm knocking. Monday night. And I guess the other event that sort of triggered this is the settlement of our mother's estate. Alan, of course, you deserve credit for doing this in record time. But each of us know that the majority of the credit goes to our late mother, Martha, and maybe partial credit goes to our late Uncle Joe. So anyways, Tuesday night in New Jersey, Ann, you're in Colorado or Wisconsin, probably. Marty in Ohio and Ellen in Wisconsin. Given the health crisis, I don't think any of us have travel plans. And I think, and this time of year, you would be in the mountains. However, with I certainly don't think your ski resort is open. So maybe that means you're in Wisconsin. I don't know. And I don't need to know. I'm not probing into your location. I am reaching out as a brother who cares about each of you. And quite honestly, I care about myself. I want to take this moment and turn it into something productive. For me, maybe along the way, it will be for you as well. Love from New Jersey. Ciao.